Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where I continue to be incredibly impressed with your viewer questions. You guys not only have some really interesting questions this week, but you're throwing me a couple of curveballs, some exciting ideas that I hadn't thought of, particularly with this first question. But before we get to it, I just want to remind you that the Beyond the Trailer annual poll for the top 10 best movies of the year and the 5 worst movies of the year is currently open, and you have until January 1st to vote in it. The link is down below in the video description. I know some of you have a couple of movies on your list that you still probably want to see before voting, but I just wanted to keep that on your radar and again remind you have until January 1st to vote. A lot of votes so far. Right now Wonder Woman is dominating the list, but it's been a great year for blockbusters, so I'll be very curious to see how it shakes up when all of your votes are cast. And again, that link is down below in the video description. All right, so Nicholas Bobadilla, that's a cool name. Nicholas Bobadilla had a really great question. I loved it. It blew my mind. All right, so Nicholas says, "Hello, Grace. I have a question that I cannot get out of my head, and it frustrates me a little bit, but it excites me. Okay, now that Disney has bought Fox, what do you think is going to happen in the future with films that Fox used to make, such as The Greatest Showman or the announced sequel for Murder on the Orient Express? Do you think movies like this will still happen? I feel that without those types of films that Fox used to make were not intended as big blockbusters, but I think they were, all box office for big studios will be blockbusters. Thank you and hope you can give your opinion on this matter." Well, I don't think The Greatest Showman is going to do that well, to be perfectly honest with you. I hope that I'm pleasantly surprised because Hugh Jackman cares about it so much. I would love for him to get a nice win there, but I don't think he is. I think Jumanji is going to squash it like a bug in the jungle. But Murder on the Orient Express, that gets me very excited. And let me explain. So I don't think you're going to get a lot of movies like, for instance, The Greatest Showman, but I think movies like Murder on the Orient Express are going to get a boost. Because they did greenlight Murder on the Orient Express too. They're going to do the Hercule Poirot Egyptian famous case from Agatha Christie's novels. But when you look at Murder on the Orient Express, if I were Bob Iger or, any Disney executive, I'd see the $55 million budget and the $298 million return. That's pretty nice. Disney isn't used to spending so little on a movie, but still getting something that looks, I think that certainly looks on the caliber of their more expensive fare. And on that note, they of course have a relationship with Kenneth Branagh already. He directed Thor for them, the first Thor, and of course Cinderella, 2 very successful ventures. So they like being in the Kenneth Branagh business. So I would be like, I will definitely make Murder on the Orient Express too, because I think Disney would probably do a little bit of a better job making sure that the movie was good throughout. Because a lot of us really enjoyed it. I loved the first third of Murder on the Orient Express. I thought it was sensational. But then I think we all felt it went off the rails a little bit. But here's what's really, really exciting. That would excite me the most as a Disney executive. I see potential for using the brand of Murder on the Orient Express, the Hercule Poirot brand, because it was so visually strong in the theme parks, right? I see it across the Disney brand, the Disney empire, right? It had such a strong visual flair and was so exciting. I said anyone who saw that movie, and I'm sure many of you will agree with me, wanted to ride the Orient Express, right? And think about the success that Universal's had with the Hogwarts train that goes between the 2 parks and the two Harry Potter lands, right? So you could put a very exciting Hollywood Studios attraction together based on Murder on the Orient Express specifically, or just the Hercule Poirot movies in general. You put that giant mustache on any actor, theme park actor, and they'll be a good stand-in, right? So I think it's a fabulous idea. And, don't forget that Disney did do Pirates of the Caribbean, so they do some interesting, and that started out, they rammed it into the ground, they drove it into the ground, and of course I think Johnny Depp has had a lot of personal problems, which haven't helped that franchise. But interestingly enough, Johnny Depp was the strongest thing in Murder on the Orient Express, because I think he's turned a corner. But this is a chance to make, I think would be a sign that there's an audience for it that also would entice Disney for blockbusters that are a little bit more sophisticated and adult, and that can potentially make just as much money as some of their other fare. So I think maybe not with The Greatest Showman, but I think that's because that movie I think is weak. I haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. I missed the press screening. But I think Murder on the Orient Express is just brand heaven. So excellent. And so I think that's my answer to your question. I think that Disney never said no to an opportunity to make money. And this is one that I think has been happily presented to them. So when you're wondering what kind of movies Disney is going to make, they're going to want to make ones that make money, but also ones that are something, an asset to them throughout the Disney empire. You know, Disney is in the branding business, and if they have an opportunity to squeeze even more money out of something, they will definitely squeeze. All right, so that's the first question of the day. Great question, Nicholas. I love it. I think you're probably a little bit more worried than I am. That might have not been the answer that you were looking for, but that's how I feel Disney would probably operate. And it makes me very excited about the future for that franchise, more so than ever. All right, the next question comes from Dark Phoenix. And Dark Phoenix says, with some of The Last Jedi's backlash being against too many diverse or female characters with Disney, particularly in the Star Wars department, will Disney in particular in the Star Wars department be afraid to push or create more diverse characters? So basically what Dark Phoenix is asking is that because this SJW narrative is taking hold, will Disney be like, maybe we shouldn't push characters of color and female characters? Well, first of all, I think that the backlash isn't that the characters exist, but how they're depicted and how, male, for the most part, white male characters are depicted in contrast to that. You know, we talk about the balance of the Force. I think that Disney has to work harder in balancing out, more traditional characters with these new characters. And also they have to realize that just putting the character in there isn't enough. Like with LeFou in Beauty and the Beast. Just the effort enough. I mean, I guess that's a starting point, but, they're going to have to move forward eventually. And I think that what they started with The Force Awakens was interesting, what Kathleen Kennedy started and J.J. Abrams started there. But I think that J.J. Abrams, the handling of those characters was, I think, borderline offensive. It was definitely unfortunate, and it was definitely, but I think to some degree offensive. But let's also remember that Disney put out Beauty and the Beast, which, while it dropped the ball with LeFou, it did include LeFou. It did cast an openly gay actor as Gaston, Luke Evans, and it had a fabulous female character in Emma Watson's Belle, one of the best female characters I think that has ever been in cinema. So that's I think a decisive win on Disney's part in terms of diversity. And then also, of course, Marvel's doing Black Panther, which is very exciting. I mean, Marvel's been a little slow to this. They were finally getting a female-led movie with, Captain Marvel, and they have Wasp getting co-billing with Ant-Man. But I think in some, Disney's going to be more cautious than other studios because they have more to lose. But they are, I think, to their credit, making progress, and I think I would assume they're listening, because they don't want to have negative headlines. And the Star Wars headlines are very negative. In fact, I really do feel the DCEU comparison is a good one, because I'm seeing only negative headlines now being generated because they get so much traffic. And that's just an unfortunate reality of the business these days, in terms of what even the trades are putting out there. Hollywood Reporter has a ton. And by the way, Hollywood Reporter pushed a lot of negative DCEU articles as well, but they are pushing negative Star Wars articles hardcore over there. And they're doing very well on the site if you look at the top articles on the site. All right, so that's the second question of the day. So just in summary, I don't think that Disney will stop doing this, but I hope they realize they have to be a little bit more careful and they have to take steps forward, right? I mean, they never backed off of the Elsa situation, with potentially being an LGBT character herself, although, they do have a history of queer baiting. Disney's careful for a reason, and I think we have to, just do this dance with them because it is moving forward, be it so slowly, in all areas. Okay, so the third viewer question comes from Agnamitra Roy. So Agnamitra Roy says, Dear Grace, I've been sending questions for quite some time patiently. Well, I'm glad we got to one, Agnamitra. Thank you for not giving up. So Agnamitra says, this is my question for now. What will the losses financially be for Warner Brothers if they scrap the DCEU and do a whole reboot with a new cast? I mean, surely money has already been invested on some upcoming movies and so on. What will the losses be if they pull the plug? Second part of the question is, do you think it's more in tune with the business angle for Warner Brothers to carry on with this array of movies, or to reboot, or maybe a soft reboot with Wonder Woman being the single one in the new canon? See, that's the problem right there, Agnamitra. You've hit the nail on the head. They can't reboot because they need to keep Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. So they have no choice but to move forward because she's been so incredibly successful in the role, both with fans and also as a cultural moment, and also financially. The movie made a lot of money. So I think what they're going to do going forward, we have to really put a pin in this until we see who the new head of the DCEU is. That's a very important hire, and it'll probably be done in the early on in the new year, because they have to decide how to move forward, because they have invested money in this. Studios, though, invest money in movies in development all the time, and then they don't move forward because, of course, it becomes a bigger loss the more you pour into it. But I think that they can't lose Wonder Woman. They just can't lose Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. Unless Wonder Woman 2, it's unfortunate what's happening with the awards situation, because it seemed like it was such a guarantee, and I don't know if Justice League, played a role in that. It's awards demise, basically. We'll see how the Oscars shake out. But it's not looking good. But if Wonder Woman 2 falls flat on its face in 2019, then maybe you could see a full reboot. Maybe they'll wait to see how that movie does. I think we've talked about this before. There are a couple of projects they're moving forward on, and they really have to get a new head there. I think, to be honest with you, I think that they have, again, no choice but to move forward. I think that they just can't reboot. I just don't think it would work. I think if they did, they'd have to take too long a break. I think they just have to move forward. I think they should stop with group movies. I think they should move away from Batman and probably Superman. And I think we'll be interested to see how Shazam, that's moving ahead very quickly. It's a flurry of casting announcements all the time. And just see how these smaller, singular films are received by audiences. Just give mainstream audiences a break from what Zack Snyder did, unfortunately. It's unfortunate that people need a break from that, but I think they do. And I think that's just what they're going to do. I think they can't reboot. I feel very strongly about rebooting. I know they want to make this stupid Flashpoint movie, but I think it's a mistake, and I think it's going to just invite more ridicule onto them, and I think it's a bad idea. All right, so that's my feeling on that, and I'd be curious to know how you guys feel down below. Now, for the fourth viewer question, this is a very interesting one from Portis2. So Portis2 says, question, in terms of the entertainment industry, what is your opinion on piracy, and what are the pros and cons of it for the industry? I absolutely love your videos and enjoy watching them every day. Greetings from London, UK. Hello. Hello across the pond. And Squeaky Wheel gets the grease. That's right, Portis2. But I thought this was a fascinating question because I don't think there are any pros to piracy. It's a bad thing. I understand that, it's a kind of an answer to the fact that it's getting very expensive streaming these days, and I think that Hollywood should be sensitive to that. But you're getting people's work for free. I think, as they say, piracy is not a victimless crime, because if the revenue isn't coming back to the project, then they can't pay for people's salaries going forward. You're basically asking people to again work for you for free, and people work very hard on these projects. And some of you might be like, oh well, they're getting paid millions. Well, a lot of the people who make these movies aren't getting paid millions, and they're going to feel it the most. So I really don't think there's any pros to piracy whatsoever, although I understand where you're coming from, and I do understand how popular it is. So one of the reasons that I wanted to have the question on the show today is I'm really curious if any of you can think of pros for piracy down below, like legit pros, right? Maybe it's exposure. It's nice for Game of Thrones. It's the most pirated show, and it just certainly doesn't seem to hurt its bottom line. But imagine how much money it would be making if there wasn't any piracy, right? And I'd be curious, why do you pirate? I don't think we're at a breaking point yet financially for this stuff. And also, I think the other problem is that Hollywood should do away with these staggered release dates. Like, for instance, we did a live viewing party of it last night, and many of you couldn't get it, where you were in other parts of the globe because it wasn't available digitally the same day. So in that case, I think that Hollywood, doesn't have a leg to stand on when they're like, oh, you shouldn't pirate. And you're like, well, why don't you make it available for purchase? Because otherwise, I'm sure a lot of these people would have purchased it, but they had no choice. People have no choice but to pirate it, because some of you told me you have to wait until like mid to late January to get it. And it's going to be available on pirate sites because it's available for streaming in the United States. So that makes absolutely no sense to me. Same with movie releases. When you make people wait so long, for instance, to watch Coco, you're going to lose a lot of business to piracy, because people are like, why should I wait? I'm just going to pirate it. But I have to say, people who are pirating, I think, are unlikely to. Would you pay to see something in a theater, or you're like, why should I when I can see it for free? So anyway, interesting question, Portis2. I'm sure you sparked an interesting comment section, down below today. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your questions. Keep them coming. We have 2 more episodes for the week before Morning Movie News goes on hiatus until after the New Year's. And again, you guys are asking some fabulous questions. I'm having a lot of fun. And also, don't forget to vote in the top 10 poll for the movies of the year. Thank you so much, and you can check out some more videos right now.